Hi everyone, welcome to today's masterclass session that will cover everything you need to know about Bitcoin. Now, my name is Ilalaro and I'm your host for this afternoon session. I have actually pulled together all of the explanations of Bitcoin that I can find throughout the internet and compiled it into one simple presentation for all of you. So this is the ultimate beginner's guide. So moving on, we will actually have a masterclass exam, which you can find by clicking on the link in the video description below. I'll also post on the live chat for everyone to access. Essentially, we'll have a total of 25 questions that will be about the content presented in this masterclass. Now, after completing the quiz, you'll see your score out of 100%. The higher that you score, the higher chance you have at winning the lucky draw. We will actually select 200 winners to win about £10 in Bitcoin, BTC each, and the rewards will be distributed to the winner's Binance accounts within 30 days. So definitely do take part, as it's a really easy way to earn some free crypto by learning about it. And also you can learn how to sort of buy and get into crypto as a result. So some rules, the masterclass quiz will be available only for a week. So it'll end next week on 7th of May. So you need to join our Telegram community, which I'll also link on the slide and in the video description below to be eligible to receive the rewards as well. So moving on to the presentation outline, I kind of just wanted to briefly touch on kind of what we'll be covering. So I want to give a really in-depth overview of the background of the world problems, introduce some of the concepts that we will be outlining when we describe Bitcoin later on. And then we'll move on to actually explaining what Bitcoin is, how it works, and a very top level summary. I'm not going to go into too much technical details. And then we're gonna finish off the presentation with actually how to buy Bitcoin, and then any glossary of terms that you might need to know within this industry. So moving on to the first section, which is the world problems. So if you ask many people around the world what are their top issues, we tend to see a common theme in regards to sort of the democracy being under attack. And also the second is that the global economy is under turmoil, and the world is suffering from potentially centuries of debt, inflation, growing booms and bust cycles. So these are, in a nutshell, what are the top two main societal issues all around the world. Now, we've discussed the background and context. Now we'll be introducing Bitcoin. Now, what is Bitcoin? To put it simply, Bitcoin is a digital currency similar to a fiat currency, which is a government-backed local currency like the pound, the US dollar, the euro, only that is not tied to any geographic region or government. Bitcoin was actually launched on January the 3rd, just after the global financial crisis, by an unknown person called Satoshi Nakamoto. We still do not know who these persons are, even to this date, even in this digital era. And lastly, Bitcoin is both a currency and a payment method. Now, I just want to give an illustration to the immense amount of research that has gone into the creation of Bitcoin. From the likes of Khan and Cerf's research to TCP, to Ralph Merkle and their introduction to crypto systems and protocols, to David Shum, who founded DigiCash, which was one of the earliest forms of money, digital money, to more recently Hal Finney in their work on reusable proof of work. All of these great minds, and there's much more that has contributed to creating Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin was actually first published as a white paper in October 31st, 2008, which is basically a research paper. And then and essentially in that research paper, it outlined a problem where that Satoshi Nakamoto find a solution. Satoshi Nakamoto found a way to create a decentralized network that could achieve a consensus agreement without any central controlling authority. Now, if you studied computer science or distributed systems, this is what's typically referred to as the Byzantium generals problem. It was first described in 1982, but it was only until 2008 in that research paper when Satoshi Nakamoto solved it. Now, they created an entirely new revolutionary piece of technology that's taken decades of research to find. Now, how does Bitcoin work in simplest terms? So it is a form of digital money and a payment system. So let's imagine you want to send Bitcoin to someone else around the world. So you start by sending Bitcoin, and then what happens is that Bitcoin transaction, instead of going to your bank or third-party intermediary to get verified, the transaction gets sent directly to specialized computers called Bitcoin miners. And now I kind of included an image of some Bitcoin miners at the right of the screen. So effectively, every 10 to 15 minutes, these Bitcoin miners, these specialized computers, solve complex algorithmic problems to verify your Bitcoin transaction using something called cryptography. Now, the fastest Bitcoin miner that does this gains bounty rewards in Bitcoin. So these Bitcoin miners are all in competition with each other and are all distributed all around the world. It's a completely decentralized network. Now, these transactions, once verified, are then recorded on the blockchain, and which is typically referred to as a public distributed ledger for a democratic election that occurs electronically. Now, through this simple mechanism, Bitcoin and miners agree on what transactions have occurred, when they've occurred, and essentially agreeing on who has the money. So in short, Bitcoin uses cryptography to secure transactions made on the Bitcoin network, and this therefore allows you to send Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere around the world without the need for a third-party financial intermediary. Now, just to illustrate this, let's imagine, the example that I provided above, but just in a diagram. You request a transaction. That transaction is then broadcasted to all the computers, or typically referred to as nodes. Bitcoin miners then verify the transaction, which are then combined to form a data block. This new data block is then added to the existing blocks, or the existing blockchain, where the transaction is then confirmed. All this process takes about 10 to 15 minutes without the need for a third-party intermediary. Now, just to give you a bit of example, a comparison between the existing money infrastructure and Bitcoin at the bottom, where you can see, the existing money infrastructure, you have to go through your bank, these credit debit cards, bank receiver, then it ends up to the receiver. And all of this process takes long, and the fees are quite high. Whereas Bitcoin, it cuts the middleman. It effectively allows money to be a peer-to-peer network where you can transfer from one person A to person B without the need of a third party. So how does actually Bitcoin work? So sending Bitcoin is similar to sending an email. So I guess most people know what email is. When you want to send someone an email, you need their email address. So for Bitcoin, this is called a Bitcoin address. So think of Bitcoin address as your account information. Now, if you look at your credit and debit card, you have your account number and sort code. And instead of number digits, Bitcoin addresses are alphanumeric, which means that it contains both numbers and letters. So Bitcoin address typically starts with 1, 3, or BC1 and contains anywhere between 25 to 35 characters long. So I've just provided an example here of a Bitcoin address. You can clearly see that BC1 is, that's a Bitcoin address. And every user of Bitcoin has their own Bitcoin address. This uniquely identifies your Bitcoin account. With this, you can receive Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere, instantaneously. Now, to buy Bitcoin, you need to use an exchange on the internet. It's similar to a traditional local exchange where you will need to convert GBP or your local currency to buy Bitcoin at the current exchange rate. So moving on to sort of the next portion of this section, which is how does Bitcoin now solve these societal and world problems that we mentioned in the beginning of this presentation? Well, it's simple. Bitcoin fundamentally changes the concept of money. Bitcoin empowers true democracy at action as it establishes a new trust system. Bitcoin derives its trust from cryptography, from computers, which allows transactions to be secured without the need for financial intermediaries or middlemen. Bitcoin enhances privacy. So even though all transactions are made public in the blockchain, they are not actually tied to anyone's real identity. So in that way, Bitcoin is pseudonymous and fairly private and fungible. Transactions are also irreversible, meaning that it's immune from interference and you cannot be stopped from using this network. Whereas in the old money system, you can. Lastly, Bitcoin removes friction. Bitcoin is digital money that you can transfer to anyone, anywhere, at any time, 24/7. It is relatively cheaper, faster and safer across international borders. In fact, back in April 2020, someone sent 1.1 billion worth in Bitcoin, which was roughly estimated to be about 161,500 Bitcoin at the time, to another Bitcoin wallet, and only paid 68 cents in fees. And guess what? It got there within 10 minutes. I just wanted to give you that example because it just shows you how disruptive this technology is going to be in terms of international payments. And this is just the beginning. So moving on to the second portion, which is how does Bitcoin solve the global turmoil, global economic turmoil? Well, Bitcoin empowers and bootstraps a technological age of economy. Bitcoin is limited in supply. This is something that actually gives it quite a lot of value because many people believe that because it's scarce, similar to the Lamborghini example that I provided, that actually that it's worth having. And in fact, Bitcoin's maximum supply is currently capped at 21 million. So there will only be up to 21 million Bitcoins created. This is because new Bitcoins are produced as a reward to miners, which I mentioned previously, who secure these transactions. But these Bitcoin rewards are halved every 4 years, which therefore indirectly lowers Bitcoin's inflation rate. So actually, Bitcoin miners tend to sell this Bitcoin reward in the open market, which is where the Bitcoins are injected into the economy. This is where you can buy Bitcoin in the open market. And so Bitcoin's market maximum supply is capped at 21 million, which is expected to happen around sometime between 2140. Secondly, Bitcoin can be seen to act as a hedge against growing debt. If the world started shifting more towards Bitcoin as their currency of choice, then demand for government-issued fiat currencies would decline. We're actually starting to see retail and institutional players come into the Bitcoin market. But what happens when entire governments and central banks start to adopt Bitcoin? Industry experts mention that at $10 million per Bitcoin, it will provide a sufficient reserve to alleviate the world's debt burden. At $10 million per Bitcoin, it could provide the world with a stable currency, replace fiat currencies, and act as the reserve currency of the world, incapable of inflation or deflation. It would also represent the ultimate store of value by then. Now, Bitcoin also opens access to finance to everyone. In the world, 1 billion people currently have access to banking. We're quite lucky and privileged in a first world country to be able to access credit and international finance capabilities at your fingertips. However, there are 6.5 billion people that operate in cash-based societies with very little access to banks and international resources. 2 billion of these people are already on the internet. With a simple application download, they can immediately become participants in the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin opens the possibility of connecting these 6.5 billion people to the rest of the world. And this is truly revolutionary, where people can connect in a completely peer-to-peer, decentralized way without a third party. Now, last, which is probably the most interesting to most of you, is Bitcoin is a non-correlated asymmetric asset return, meaning that Bitcoin has the potential to perform well during times of global instability and global financial crisis. So COVID-19 is a great example of this. When you actually look at it, industry experts claim that owning stocks that are pegged to fiat currency would not actually act as a safe hedge against a global financial crisis or collapse. And in fact, Bitcoin has started to become less correlated to these traditional assets. So in a way, instead of inflating other asset markets, what we're starting to see is people holding and using Bitcoin as a way of transaction, as a way of money value transfer. Now, I also want to introduce and tie into this sort of analysis of the Bitcoin stock to flow model, which was created by 100 trillion USD. And effectively, this shows a relationship between Bitcoin supply and its inflation rate. So the Bitcoin stock to flow model is based on the so-called stock to flow ratio, which is a measure between the existing supply of Bitcoin, which is referred to as the stock, against its annual production, which is called the flow. So as you can see over time, Bitcoin's price, which is highlighted in dots, has regularly shown exponential movement upwards. And this is because the supply is shocked by the mining rewards that are being halved every 4 years. So if you think about it in a simple supply and demand, if the supply of the Bitcoin rewards that are given to miners are halved every 4 years and the demand stays the same, therefore the price has to compensate for that by going up. Now, the higher the stock to flow, the higher Bitcoin's price valuation is. Now, you can see that this model predicts that by 2030 and 2035, Bitcoin's price would be somewhere between 1 million to 10 million USD. Now, obviously, there are some limitations of this model because supply scarcity alone is not conclusive enough to formulate this prediction or judgment. But fortunately, the demand curve that you also need is equally as compelling and equally as exponential. So both these models and scales are logarithmic, which shows that both price and demand have been growing at the same time, at the same rate, and growing exponentially. Now, I'm going to present some common Bitcoin misconceptions. So these are some of the misconceptions that you probably have heard about or seen from mainstream media. Now I want to try to address each one of them fairly quickly. So Bitcoin is used by criminals. Well, actually, that's incorrect. Very small percentage of transactions are used for nefarious purposes, but there are far more bad actors that use fiat local currencies to transact. Bitcoin is illegal. Actually, exchanging Bitcoin with anything else is like a barter exchange, which is completely legal, but in most countries is a taxable event. So definitely do check your local country for a capital gains tax. Bitcoin doesn't have any intrinsic value. Well, if you take a step back, nothing has intrinsic value. Value is subjective to the eye of the beholder. Money has emergent value. It emerges from our need to account, to store, to exchange value and scale. Bitcoin is software enabling permissionless, trustless, censorship-resistant value transfer, money on a global scale. Bitcoin is a company, stock or share. Well, actually, Bitcoin is not centrally owned by anyone, as it's completely decentralized and distributed all around the world, so it doesn't act like a traditional stock or share does. Bitcoin wastes too much energy. Well, if you actually look at the data, about 39% of Bitcoin miners use some form of renewable energy. And a large majority of energy are being recycled or at least are using the lost energy resources that are not being utilized currently. Bitcoin is too expensive. I tend to see this quite a lot. Bitcoin's price is too high. I don't want to buy it. Well, you can actually buy and sell fractions of a Bitcoin. The smallest unit is referred to as a Satoshi, and it goes up to 8 decimal places. So you can actually buy 0.000000001 BTC or Bitcoin. Bitcoin is too volatile or speculative asset. Well, like with all emerging technologies, there'll always be a period of price volatility as it gets accepted onto the global stage. Everyone learnt to crawl before they can walk, but you ended up walking eventually. So similar to money, Bitcoin's price will see these speculation and price and boom and bust cycles until it becomes naturally accepted over time. And that's where actually historically, price tends to reduce its volatility. Now, all in all, Bitcoin, why is Bitcoin valuable? Why is Bitcoin such a revolutionary piece of technology? Well, first is Bitcoin is limited in supply, like we mentioned before. Bitcoin is limited to 21 million coins. This makes Bitcoin a hard money asset that is also immune to money inflation and quantitative easing, money printing. Bitcoin is digital. Bitcoin is a global non-political money that transcends borders and governments. Bitcoin is irreversible. Bitcoin is fungible and transactional pseudonymous, meaning that they are near immune to sovereign censorship or confiscation. Bitcoin is permissionless. Bitcoin is trustless technology, meaning that anyone with internet access can take part in without needing to ask for permission. Bitcoin is decentralized. Bitcoin has no CEO, there's no government body, there's no central issuing or verification authority. There's no one to shut Bitcoin down. Bitcoin has growing acceptance. There's growing numbers of retail users, businesses, institutions, entrepreneurs that are accepting or basing new business concepts on Bitcoin. Now, I kind of want to go over a comparison between, Bitcoin in relation to previous versions of money, so gold and fiat currency. So Bitcoin has actually qualities of hard asset money that you want from a good form of money. Bitcoin is durable, portable, fungible, divisible, scarce. It's a store of value. It's a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account. Obviously, there are certain limitations to Bitcoin, but it's an improvement from gold and it's improvement from fiat currencies that we use today. Now, moving on, Bitcoin is the future and it's for the future. We're only scratching the surface of what Bitcoin can potentially offer. When you take off government or central bank interference, you unlock a lot of exciting opportunities. We're at the same point in humanity where we just discovered gold. Yeah, it's shiny, it's non-corrosive, but it took us many hundreds and even thousands of years to innovate and integrate gold in our lives. This is the same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is divisible, it's programmable, and it's transgalactic money. This means that Bitcoin network allows any individual to send any amount as small as 100 million of a Bitcoin. You can't do that with today's money payment systems. This opens the opportunity to do microtransactions. You can collect payments from millions of people around the world in tiny amounts and make them in aggregate be worth something. Bitcoin is programmable money that you can build whole digital and ecosystems on top of. It's interoperable with Internet of Things, with smart machine learning, with artificial intelligence, augmented reality. The possibilities of pushing innovations to the edges of the network is unsurmountable, and you don't need permission. Bitcoin is transgalactic money. Bitcoin is digital and therefore durable and doesn't wear out and can last forever. It is not restricted to any geographic region and therefore can be used in space, other planets, and even other solar systems. Although Bitcoin is digital money, it's so much more than that. Saying Bitcoin is digital money is like saying the internet is just like an email. Money is just the first application of Bitcoin. Like email is one of the many hundreds of thousands of applications that you use on the internet today. Bitcoin is a technology that can evolve in a completely decentralized way, and we've never done this before in the history of humanity. This invention is truly revolutionary. I'm getting goosebumps every time I actually read this, because money is just the first application that you can build whole distributed consensus systems on. These other applications can include distributed fair voting, stock ownership, asset registration, and maybe many other applications that we probably would not even think of within our lifetime. Now, you're probably motivated by that speech and don't want to lose time to buy Bitcoin. But with any type of investment or trading, there'll always be a financial disclaimer. All trading carries risks, so only risk capital that you can afford to lose. Bitcoin is still very early in its life cycle, so it's hugely swayed by speculative and sentiment within the industry. Now, how do you buy Bitcoin? Now, Bitcoin, as we mentioned previously, you can buy Bitcoin by connecting to an online exchange and where you swap your local currency with Bitcoin at the current exchange rate. You can do this by visiting Binance.com, which is the world's leading blockchain ecosystem and crypto asset infrastructure provider, which has a suite of financial products that includes the large digital asset exchange. Started in July 2017, Binance.com is actually leading the crypto asset industry by trading volume and is used by millions of users in over 180 countries. And the reason why they use us is because we are low-cost fee provider. We offer a diverse portfolio of coins to choose from. We offer deep liquidity and fast execution times, and we're protected by the Safe Fee Fund. Now, how do you actually buy Bitcoin on Binance.com? So first things first, you have to register an account. The second stage is to verify your account. And then the third is to buy using crypto or debit card. Now, it's actually pretty self-explanatory. You first have to go to Binance.com, click on the Register Now button, or alternatively, you can use the link I've provided in the slide and also in the video description to get up to 10% discount on your trading fees. So once you've started to register and enter your email address and password, you then get an email address, an email with a two-factor authentication code. This is a 6-digit code that you need to use to essentially set up your account. So you enter that code in the next stage, and then bam, you've registered the account. Now you move on to the second stage, which is to verify your Binance account. Now this is where you need to provide certain information and certain account details, upload your ID documentation, and also selfie upload so that you can unlock deposits and withdrawals. So by doing this, you go to the top navigation bar on the right, hover over your profile icon, click on identification, and then you can see here, you just click on the verify button on the right. And then, like I mentioned before, you provide your basic account information, your ID, and your selfie upload. And then once you've verified your account, then you're able to actually start buying. So similar to the previous two steps, you go on Binance.com, then top navigation bar. Now this time you go to the left-hand side, you hover over buy crypto, you choose your local currency. In this case, it's GBP. And then you click on credit and debit card, and you'll be directed to the credit and debit card page where you can start to buy crypto. Please select the relevant coin. In this case is Bitcoin. And then let's say you want to buy £50 worth of Bitcoin. You select 50, you type in the card details, the billing information, and then you click pay now, and essentially the transaction gets approved within a couple of minutes. And that is how you buy Bitcoin on Binance.com. Now, I just want to lastly touch on some common terminologies and phrases within the Bitcoin industry. These are just some of the top phrases that I found, but please do more research and check out the Binance Academy by clicking on the link provided. Binance Academy is our educational arm to learn more and keep up to speed with the lingo within the industry. Now, that concludes the presentation. I hope you did enjoy it. Just a gentle reminder that we will have a quiz that will be based on the content provided in this masterclass session. You can find this link by clicking on the video description below. So definitely do take part, as it's a really easy way to be in a chance to win some free Bitcoin by learning about it. And yeah, that's it from me. Please do slap a like and comment below if you enjoyed the content of this masterclass. We will be doing more of these types of events moving forward, so I do look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you. Goodbye.